Dawn broke cold over the wagon camp. Lydia woke to silence where horses should have nickered, emptiness where a guide's tent had stood. She emerged from her wagon into frost-bright morning, sensing wrongness before she understood it. The guide's canvas lay collapsed. His horses were gone. The lockbox containing every family's advance payment had vanished with him. Men stumbled from family wagons, confusion turning to panic as realization spread. 15 families, 3 weeks into mountain wilderness, now stranded without leadership. Children sensed adult fear and began to whimper. Women gathered them close, faces tight with worry. Lydia's eyes lifted to the sky. The morning star still hung above the eastern peaks, brilliant against fading darkness. Her fingers found the worn brass compass in her pocket, her father's compass. She calculated angle and position by habit, mind-mapping distances while chaos erupted around her. "We're lost!" someone shouted. "God help us, we're lost out here!" The men gathered in a tight cluster, voices rising. Some wanted to head north, others south. A bearded blacksmith insisted they backtrack 3 weeks to the last settlement. A farmer argued for pushing west blindly, hoping to stumble onto the valley. They knew directions but not navigation, landmarks but not calculation. Lydia watched them argue, watched them guess. She knew the way. Her father had taught her to read the sky like other girls read primers. She could plot their course to the settlement valley within a day's march of accuracy. But she stayed silent. These men wouldn't listen to a woman about navigation. They'd dismiss her instantly, mockingly, book learning. They'd say, "Women's foolishness." She'd seen it before. That particular contempt reserved for females who spoke of mathematics and stars. She turned away from the arguing men, studying the mountain peaks. The aspens had gone gold, their leaves falling. Frost glittered on yellowing grass. Geese had flown south yesterday in long V's. Every sign said winter approached faster than they could walk. A man's voice broke through her calculation. "You studying something, ma'am?" She looked down from the sky. David Miller stood nearby, watching her with curious eyes. He was younger than most of the men, maybe 30. With a quiet manner she'd noticed during the journey. His wife Sarah had been kind. His daughter Emma had smiled at Lydia twice. "Just the morning star," Lydia said carefully. "You were measuring something." His tone held no mockery, only interest. "With your eyes." She met his gaze. Intelligence looked back at her, and something else, openness, maybe, or desperation, behind them. A child started crying, then another. The sound spread through the camp like contagion. Women tried to soothe them. But how could you comfort a child when you were terrified yourself? Lydia looked at her father's compass, then at David, still watching her, then at the unchanging star above the mountains. She knew the way. But would anyone listen? 3 days passed. 3 days of men arguing directions while supplies dwindled and tempers flared. Lydia watched them waste time circling the same camps, retracing confused paths. Children grew quieter. Women's faces grew harder. On the third evening, the blacksmith proposed splitting the group. Half would backtrack, half push forward. Families would separate, gambling on opposed directions. The camp fractured into hostile factions, voices rising around the central fire. Lydia sat apart, sketching star positions in her journal. Sarah Miller approached, carrying her daughter. "You know something," Sarah said quietly. "Don't you?" Lydia looked up. Sarah's eyes held frank assessment, mother to mother, woman to woman. "My father was a government surveyor," Lydia said. "He taught me celestial navigation. I can plot our course by the stars." Sarah's breath caught. "You can get us to the valley." "I believe so." "Then tell them." Lydia shook her head. "They won't listen." "They will if they're desperate enough." Sarah glanced at her sleeping daughter. "And they're getting desperate." The argument by the fire grew louder. A man shoved another. Women pulled them apart before fists could fly. This was how people died in wilderness, not from nature. but from their own chaos. Lydia stood. Her legs trembled, but she walked to the fire. Men's voices fell silent as she entered their circle. "I can navigate by stars," she said clearly. "My father taught me. I know how to reach the valley." The silence lasted 3 heartbeats. Then the blacksmith laughed. "Navigation ain't women's work," he said. "You think reading some book makes you a guide? I can show you the mathematics." Lydia replied, "The star positions don't lie. Book learning won't save us in real wilderness." Another man said, "We need someone who knows the land. The stars are above every land," Lydia said. She knelt, found a stick, began sketching in the dirt by firelight. "Look, this is Polaris, the North Star. It holds constant. These constellations rotate predictably. From their positions I can calculate latitude. From the time of their rising I can determine longitude. Combined with terrain features, I can plot a course accurate to within enough." The blacksmith waved dismissively. "You're a woman playing at men's work. We don't have time for this foolishness." Lydia's face burned. She started to rise, to retreat, to accept their dismissal. "Wait." David's voice cut through the murmurs. He stepped forward, knelt beside her sketch. "Show me how it works," she explained again, more carefully. David asked real questions. Where would her course take them? How certain could she be? What landmarks would they see? She answered each question with mathematics and precision. When she finished, David stood. "My family follows her," he said. "If the rest of you want to keep arguing, that's your business. But I'll trust wisdom over pride." Sarah stood beside him. "We follow her too." 2 other families rose. Young couples, both with small children, both desperate enough to gamble on knowledge instead of bluster. The camp divided. 12 families stayed with the arguing men. 3 families joined Lydia. "You're fools," the blacksmith said. "That woman will lead you to your deaths." David met his eyes steadily. "Stars don't lie, but men often do. I'll trust the sky." Lydia looked at the 3 families, 12 people total. 12 lives now, depending on her mathematics, her memory, her father's teaching. If she was wrong, they would die. All of them. She looked up at Polaris. It shone steady and sure, unchanging since her father first showed her how to find it. "We leave at dawn," she said. They camped separately that night. Lydia couldn't sleep, mind racing through calculations. Sarah found her before dawn, sitting with star charts spread across her lap. "Can't rest either?" Sarah asked gently. "I keep checking my math." Lydia's voice shook. "If I'm wrong, then we trust you were right." Sarah sat beside her. "Tell me about your father." The story spilled out. Her mother had died when Lydia was 8. Her father, a government surveyor mapping Western territories, had taken her on expeditions rather than leave her with relatives. He'd taught her everything: mathematics, celestial navigation, topography, terrain reading. He said the sky was the only map that couldn't be stolen or burned, Lydia whispered. She touched the instruments laid before her: compass, sextant, charts covered in her father's handwriting. He wanted me to join him officially when I turned 20. What happened? Surveying accident. 2 years ago, he miscalculated a cliff face. Lydia's throat closed. One error. That's all it takes. Sarah's hand covered hers. One error made in haste, in poor light, probably exhausted. You're making these calculations rested, carefully, with proper instruments. You're not your father, Lydia. You're his daughter, his best student. David approached carrying coffee. "Sun's rising," he said. "Time to show them what you know." The 3 families prepared quickly. The main camp watched with mixture of mockery and uncertainty. As Lydia set their heading by compass and morning star, she heard whispers. "Woman navigator. Fool's errand. They'll be begging to rejoin us in 3 days. But one voice said, "What if she's right?" Lydia led them northeast. The direction felt wrong. Instinct said west to reach the valley. But mathematics said northeast to skirt the impassable peaks, then west through a lower pass. Trust the numbers. Trust the stars. David walked beside her wagon. "You're certain?" he asked quietly. "As certain as mathematics allows." "That's more certain than guessing," he smiled. "My daughter asked if you'd teach her star names tonight." Lydia's chest tightened with unfamiliar warmth. "I'd like that." They traveled through morning into afternoon. Behind them, the main camp disappeared from view. Ahead, mountains rose like walls. The path Lydia chose looked impossibly narrow, threading between peaks. Sarah's voice carried forward. "Where did she learn this?" "From her father," David told the others. "A government surveyor. She's been mapping territory since she was a child." "A woman surveyor." Young Mrs. Patterson sounded awed rather than skeptical. "Knowledge doesn't care who holds it," David said firmly. At evening camp, Lydia took her star readings while Emma watched. The child asked questions and whispered wonder. Lydia showed her Cassiopeia, Ursa Major, the steady North Star. "They're always there?" Emma asked. "Always," Lydia confirmed. "No matter how lost you feel, the stars know where you are." She plotted their position on her charts. They'd made excellent progress, nearly 20 miles. At this pace, they'd reach the fort in 6 days, the valley in 3 weeks, if her calculations held true. She looked at David across the fire. He was watching her with something beyond gratitude. Trust, perhaps, or faith. The morning star would rise in 4 hours. She'd check their course again then, make any needed corrections, mathematics and stars. Her father's legacy. Now her responsibility. 12 people trusted her completely. She would not fail them the way she couldn't save her father. She couldn't. 6 days of steady progress. 6 mornings checking position by stars. 6 evenings calculating the next day's march. Lydia fell into the rhythm her father had taught her observe. Calculate, verify, proceed. The 3 families followed her course without question now. David walked beside her wagon each day, learning her methods. Emma collected pretty rocks and showed Lydia each one. Sarah helped with the star readings, holding the lamp while Lydia used her sextant. "You make it look simple," Sarah said on the 5th evening. "It's just mathematics. Numbers don't lie." "Neither do you," Sarah smiled. "That's why we trust you." On the morning of the 6th day, they crested a rocky ridge. Lydia's breath caught. Below, exactly where her calculations predicted, lay the frontier fort. Small but solid, with smoke rising from multiple chimneys. Proof. Mathematical. Undeniable proof. Emma shrieked with joy. The families cheered. David grinned at Lydia, who stood frozen in wonder. Her calculations had manifested into salvation, abstract mathematics becoming concrete safety. They descended to celebration. Fort traders rushed out, shocked to see travelers. "We thought your group was lost," the fort commander said. "When we heard the guide abandoned you." "We found our own guide," David said. Gesturing to Lydia, the commander studied her instruments with professional interest. "You navigated by stars." "Yes, sir. Government trained. My father was a surveyor. He taught me." The commander nodded slowly. "You headed for the valley settlement." "Yes, sir. 3 weeks west. I calculate." "Your calculations are sound. You're on course." He smiled. "They're fortunate to have you." The families rested 3 days, resupplying. On the 2nd day, riders appeared from the east. The main group, 12 families who'd dismissed Lydia, arrived exhausted and humbled. They'd followed Lydia's trail markers, finding them more reliable than their own instincts. The blacksmith approached Lydia stiffly. "I was wrong," he said. I apologize. Other men echoed his words. Not enthusiastically, but genuinely. Pride had met mathematics and lost. Will you guide all of us? An older woman asked. Please. Our children need safe passage. Lydia looked at the expanded group. 15 families now, 73 people. The weight of responsibility pressed down like physical burden. Sarah touched her arm. You can do this, David added. We'll help. You navigate. I'll organize the daily marches. Together. Together. The word steadied her. We leave tomorrow at dawn, Lydia said. That evening, the whole camp gathered for her star reading. Men who'd mocked her now watched reverently as she used her sextant, calculated position, plotted the next day's course, her father's instruments, her father's knowledge, now serving 73 souls. David stood beside her as she worked. You proved them wrong, he said quietly. I proved the mathematics right. There's a difference. Is there? His voice held warmth beyond friendship. You had courage to speak up. Courage to lead despite their mockery. The mathematics wouldn't matter if you hadn't been brave enough to use it. Lydia met his eyes across lamplight. Something unspoken passed between them. Recognition. Perhaps. Understanding that both of them were seeking fresh starts, both carrying grief, both finding unexpected purpose in wilderness. Thank you, she whispered, for believing me first. I'll keep believing. He smiled, all the way to the valley. But autumn was dying fast. Morning frosts grew heavier. Aspens stood bare. Snow dusted the high peaks each night, melting slower each day. October approached, and with it, mountain winter. Lydia studied the western sky before sleeping. Storm clouds massed on the horizon, dark and ominous. She calculated 3 weeks to the valley if weather held. But weather, unlike stars, followed no predictable mathematics. 2 weeks of united travel. The expanded group functioned smoothly under Lydia's navigation. Families helped each other without the earlier friction. Children played together. Women shared cooking duties. Men followed David's organization of daily marches. Lydia moved through her new role with quiet competence. Morning and evening star readings. Daily course plotting. Constant attention to terrain features and landmarks. The community looked to her now without question. Her authority earned through consistent accuracy. But privately, fear gnawed at her. One evening, while taking star readings, her hands trembled. Sarah noticed immediately. What's wrong? I keep thinking about my father, Lydia whispered. He was experienced, careful, thorough, and one mistake killed him. What if I'm missing something? What if I've miscalculated, and I'm leading them all toward disaster? Sarah gripped her shoulders. Your father died because nature is unpredictable. Because accidents happen. Not because knowledge failed. You're using everything he taught you. Lydia, you're honoring him by being exactly this brave. Tears blurred Lydia's vision of the stars. I'm terrified. Courage isn't absence of fear. It's acting despite fear. Sarah hugged her. You're the bravest person I know. David found them after star readings finished. Emma wants to show you something, he said. Lydia followed him to his wagon. Emma had drawn pictures, crude but enthusiastic sketches of constellations, each labeled in careful letters. Miss Lydia taught me, Emma announced proudly. Warmth flooded Lydia's chest. She knelt beside the child. These are beautiful. Emma hugged her spontaneously. You're my star teacher. Over Emma's head. Lydia met David's eyes. He watched them with expression she couldn't quite read. Longing, perhaps, or hope. Later. David helped Lydia take evening readings. She taught him to use the sextant, his hands clumsy but earnest. They stood close, sharing instruments and lamplight. My wife died 2 years ago, David said suddenly. Fever. Emma barely remembers her. I'm sorry. I came west for fresh start, so Emma could grow up somewhere new, without constant reminders. He adjusted the sextant carefully. But she needs more than fresh start. She needs a mother. Lydia finished softly. Someone who sees her, who teaches her, who makes her eyes light up like yours do. David turned to face her. Emma loves you already. Lydia's heart hammered. David, I'm not asking anything. Not yet. His voice was gentle. I just want you to know what I see, what Emma sees. They finished the readings in charged silence. Lydia's calculations were accurate as always, but her mind raced beyond mathematics. David's words, Emma's hug, Sarah's friendship, she was building something beyond navigation here. Family, perhaps, belonging, but that night, lying awake in her wagon, dread crept in. The morning frost was heavier. Her breath fogged visibly. Snow on the peaks no longer melted by noon. Every sign said winter approached faster than expected. She calculated their position. 2.5 weeks to the valley by her estimate. But they needed to cross a high mountain pass fastest route, but dangerously exposed. The alternative added a week to their journey. They couldn't spare a week. Supplies were already tight. Lydia made the decision they'd take the high pass. It meant 3 days of exposure above the tree line, but they'd reach the valley before serious snow, if the weather held. She looked at her father's compass in the darkness. Touching the worn brass, "Guide me," she whispered. "Please." But the compass only pointed north, unchanging and indifferent. The weather would come or not come, regardless of prayer or mathematics. Tomorrow they'd begin the ascent. They climbed into the high pass on a cold October morning. The trail narrowed between rocky walls, elevation climbing steadily. Trees thinned, then disappeared. They emerged above the tree line into exposed stone wilderness. Lydia's calculations were perfect. The pass was exactly where she'd predicted. The trail clear and navigable. They made excellent progress the first day. On the second morning, clouds rolled in from the west. They came fast thick, dark, massive. Within an hour, light snow began falling. Lydia watched the sky with growing alarm. This wasn't normal mountain weather. This was a storm system, the kind her father had taught her to dread. "How bad?" David asked quietly. "Bad." She'd never lied to him. Wouldn't start now. "We need to move fast. Get through the pass before it hits fully." But nature cared nothing for need. By midday, snow fell heavily. Temperature plummeted. Wind rose from whisper to howl. Visibility dropped to yards. Families huddled in wagons, terrified. Horses balked, sensing danger. Lydia tried to take star readings but saw only white. Her sextant was useless. Her charts might as well be blank paper. Every skill she possessed required seeing the sky. The blizzard had blinded her. Men emerged from wagons, panic in their eyes. The blacksmith shouted above the wind, "You said the pass was safe. You said we'd make it through." I calculated based on normal weather. "You led us into a death trap." He gestured at the whiteout. "We're exposed up here. We can't stay. Can't see. Can't move. You've killed us." "That's enough," David said sharply. "Is it look around?" The blacksmith's voice cracked. "Your star woman can't save us now." Other men gathered, fear making them hostile. They argued about turning back, pushing forward, making camp. Every option was impossible in a blizzard at this elevation. Children were crying. Women begging their men to fix this. Emma's small voice called, "Miss Lydia." Lydia stood in swirling snow, unable to answer. For the first time since they'd followed her, she had no answer. Mathematics couldn't stop a storm. Star knowledge meant nothing when clouds blocked the sky. She'd led them here. Into exposure, into danger, into possible death. The blacksmith was right. She'd failed them. David found her at dusk, standing alone outside the wagon circle. Snow had already accumulated to her knees. She was nearly frozen. "Lydia!" He pulled her toward shelter. "What are you doing? I can't see the stars," she said numbly. "I can't navigate. I don't know what to do." "Come inside. You'll freeze." "Maybe I should." Her voice broke. "Maybe they're right. Maybe women shouldn't lead." He gripped her shoulders hard. "Listen to me. This storm isn't your fault. Weather doesn't care about calculations, but these people need you anyway. I failed them. You haven't failed anyone, not yet." His eyes blazed. "My daughter asked if we're going to die. I couldn't answer her. Lydia, because I don't know. But I know you're the smartest person in this camp. The most knowledgeable. If anyone can figure out how to survive this, it's you." She shook her head helplessly. "Without stars, then use something else. You know more than star navigation. Your father taught you terrain reading, weather patterns, survival. Use that. I don't know if I can. You have to try." He pulled her close. "Please. For Emma. For all of us. Try." The storm raged through the night. Morning brought no relief. 2 feet of snow. Still falling. Wagons trapped, families terrified. The elderly man from the Patterson wagon developed fever pneumonia beginning. This wasn't navigation failure. This was survival crisis. And Lydia's star knowledge was useless. She sat in her wagon, staring at her father's instruments. Compass, sextant, star charts. All worthless in a whiteout. What would her father do? The answer came slowly. He wouldn't navigate by stars. He'd navigate by land, by wind direction and slope gradient, by terrain drainage and natural shelter. He'd taught her those things too. Between the astronomy lessons, Lydia emerged into the storm with new purpose. David found her studying the terrain, mittened hands feeling the snow-covered ground. "What are you doing?" "Trying to remember everything my father taught me about mountains." She looked at him through swirling snow. "Stars aren't the only navigation. Terrain talks if you know how to listen." She gathered the men, sharing her plan. They couldn't stay exposed in the pass. They couldn't see to navigate forward safely. But they could move downslope carefully, methodically, following the natural drainage. "Water always finds valleys," she explained. "Valleys mean lower elevation, tree cover, shelter from wind. We move wagons one at a time, roped together, feel our way down until we're below the worst of it." "That's insane," the blacksmith said. "We could drive right off a cliff." "We will die if we stay here," Lydia replied calmly. "This storm isn't ending. We're out of options." David stepped beside her. "You trusted her to get us this far. Trust her to get us through this." This time, no one argued. Terror had eliminated pride. They moved agonizingly slowly. Lydia went first, feeling the slope, testing each yard of progress. The wagons followed, roped together, inching through whiteout. Wind screamed. Snow stung exposed skin. Every moment felt like their last. But the slope told stories. A slight leftward tilt meant a drainage channel. Rougher ground meant rocks. Smoother meant open space. The wind's direction indicated exposure versus shelter. Lydia read the land like Braille. Translating terrain into direction, David never left her side. When she stumbled, he caught her. When she doubted, he steadied her. "Keep going," he said. "You're doing it." 2 days of terrifying descent. 2 days of frozen fear and tiny progress. Children whimpered. Adults prayed. Emma clung to Sarah, asking for Lydia. On the morning of the 3rd day, Lydia felt vegetation under the snow. Brush first, then small trees. They were descending below the worst elevation. By afternoon, the storm's fury lessened. Wind dropped from scream to howl. Snow thinned from blizzard to heavy fall. At sunset, they broke through into a protected valley. Trees sheltered them from the worst wind. The ground leveled. A small stream ran unfrozen through the center. Families collapsed into relief. Some cried. Others laughed hysterically. David pulled Lydia into a fierce hug. "You did it," he said. "You saved us." Emma ran to Lydia, wrapping small arms around her waist. "You're the bravest person in the world." That evening, the clouds broke. Stars emerged, first a few, then thousands. Lydia took readings with shaking hands, calculating their position. They were 20 miles from the valley settlement, off her original course but alive. Her knowledge, adapted beyond star navigation, had guided them through the impossible. The blacksmith approached her across the campfire. "I was wrong," he said simply. "About everything. About you." "You were frightened," Lydia replied. "We all were. You could have let us die up there, after how I treated you." He met her eyes. "But you saved us anyway." Other men echoed his thanks. Women hugged her. Children called her the Star Lady who beat the storm. But Lydia only felt exhaustion and relief. She'd proven something to herself more than anyone. Competence wasn't just star knowledge. It was adaptation, perseverance, courage under pressure. Her father's death had been an accident, random and unavoidable, not a judgment on his skill or her potential. She'd let that guilt go in the blizzard. Let it freeze and fall away. David found her alone under the stars later. "I meant what I said before the storm," he told her quietly, "about Emma needing you, about what I see when I look at you." Lydia turned to him. "And what do you see?" "Someone brave, someone brilliant, someone I'd like to build a future with." He smiled. "If you'd have me." She touched his face gently. "I'd have you." He kissed her under the stars she'd learned to navigate by. And for the first time in 2 years, Lydia felt something beyond grief and duty. She felt hope. The final week passed in steady progress. They traveled through lower elevations where autumn still held. The storm had exhausted itself in the high country, leaving clear skies behind. Families moved with unity forged by shared survival. Men asked Lydia to teach them basic star navigation. Women included her in their circles. Children brought her their questions and treasures. David walked beside her every day. They talked about everything: their pasts, their losses, their hopes for the future. Their relationship deepened through quiet understanding rather than dramatic declaration. Sarah watched them with knowing smiles. Emma declared Lydia would be her new mother. David gently corrected her. These things took time, needed proper courtship. But Emma saw what the adults were still negotiating. On November 8th, they crested the final ridge. Below spread the settlement valley cabins clustered near a river, smoke rising from chimneys, fields lying fallow for winter, people working. The promised land, exactly where Lydia's calculations had led them. The 15 families descended together as the sun set. They arrived not as strangers but as survivors, bound by trial. Settlement folks rushed out in amazement. "We thought you were lost." When the guide disappeared, "We feared." "We found a better guide," David announced, gesturing to Lydia, the settlement leader, a weathered rancher named Thomas. Listen to their story: Guide's abandonment, Lydia's star navigation, the blizzard survival. He asked intelligent questions, examining her instruments and charts. "You learned this from your father?" "Yes, sir. He was a government surveyor." Thomas nodded slowly. "We need a surveyor here, someone to map land claims, plot roads, plan expansion. It's skilled work. Hard work." "I can do it," Lydia said. "I believe you can." He smiled. "The position pays fair wages, includes a land claim of your own, and a vote in town decisions. You're offering me the job? If you'll take it." He turned to the gathered crowd. "What say you, shall we make her our official surveyor?" The vote was unanimous. Shouts of approval from families she'd led. welcoming applause from settlement residents. Lydia stood stunned as reality settled over her. She had a home, a profession, a purpose beyond simple survival. That evening, the community held a celebration feast. Long tables under stars, food and music and storytelling. The families retold their journey, each emphasizing Lydia's role. The blacksmith called her the bravest woman he'd known. Sarah called her a sister. Emma called her our star lady repeatedly. David sat beside Lydia, his hand finding hers under the table. "You did it," he said softly. "Everything you hoped for." "We did it," she corrected. "I couldn't have led them without your support." "Then we make a good team." "We do." Emma climbed into Lydia's lap, tired from excitement. The child's weight felt right, natural. David watched them with such open love that Lydia's throat tightened. This was family. Not the one she'd lost, but the one she was building. Later, standing under stars with David, Lydia took a final reading. Force of habit, muscle memory from 2 years of navigating, but also confirmation they were exactly where she'd calculated they would be. "What do you see up there?" David asked, following her gaze. "The same stars that guided us here. The same ones I learned from my father." She smiled. "The same ones that will be there tomorrow when we start surveying roads." He raised an eyebrow. "If you'll help, I could use an assistant. I'd be honored." He pulled her close. "But I should warn you, my intentions aren't purely professional." "Good," she said. "Neither are mine." He kissed her under the infinite stars, and Lydia knew with mathematical certainty that she was finally, truly home. Winter passed quietly. Lydia worked as settlement surveyor, mapping land claims and plotting expansion. She lived in a small cabin near David's family, taking most meals with them. Emma began calling her almost mama, waiting for the almost to drop. Spring arrived like a promise kept. Snow melted into wildflowers. Bare trees budded green. The valley came alive with birdsong and possibility. On a warm April morning, the community gathered for a cabin raising. Lydia's cabin, her own permanent home. Everyone participated. Men raised walls. Women prepared food. Children carried tools. The elderly Patterson gentleman, fully recovered from his pneumonia, carved her door by hand. David led the building, directing placement of beams and windows. By sunset, the structure stood complete. Walls, roof, a riverstone hearth, windows facing east to catch the sunrise. A home built by the people she'd saved, the community she'd joined. As workers departed, David lingered. He stayed through dinner, through stargazing with Emma, through the child's bedtime. When Sarah took Emma home, David remained. "I should go," he said, not moving. "You should stay," Lydia replied. They stood outside her new cabin, surrounded by night sounds and spring warmth. David took her hands. "I'd like to court you properly, with community's blessing, with time for Emma to adjust, with respect for—" "Yes," Lydia interrupted, smiling. "I haven't asked the question yet." "Then ask it," he laughed. "Miss Lydia Hayes, may I court you with intention of marriage?" "You may." "Mr. David Miller." They courted through spring into summer, long walks, shared meals, family time with Emma. The community watched approvingly. Sarah planned enthusiastically. Emma collected wildflowers for the wedding she declared inevitable. On a July evening, David proposed officially, kneeling in her cabin, offering his grandmother's ring, speaking words of love and partnership. Lydia said yes with her whole heart. They married in August. Simple ceremony by the river, whole community attending. Lydia wore a dress Sarah had helped sew. Emma stood as flower girl, beaming. The blacksmith gave the toast. Speaking of courage and wisdom, Thomas, the settlement leader, performed the ceremony. "Do you promise to guide each other through all weather?" he asked, smiling at their story. "We do," they said together, after the ceremony. Families she'd led west gave gifts. Quilts, tools, preserved foods, blessings. The Patterson family gave her father's surveying instruments polished and repaired, honor to the man who'd taught her everything. Evening fell gently. Lydia and David stood outside their shared cabin, the one the community had built, now their home together. Emma slept inside, exhausted from celebration. Music and laughter drifted from the continuing party. David pulled Lydia close. Happy. More than I imagined possible. We need to survey the North Road tomorrow, he said. Thomas wants to extend the settlement that direction. We'll start at dawn. She smiled. After I check the stars, always the navigator. Always. She looked up at the emerging stars, finding familiar constellations. Cassiopeia, Ursa Major, Polaris, steady and true. They're the same stars that guided us here, the same ones my father taught me, the same ones I'll teach our children. Our children. David's voice held joy. Someday. Emma first, but someday. She rested her head on his shoulder. We have time to chart that future together. Together, he agreed. I like the sound of that. Above them, stars shone in their ancient patterns. Unchanging, reliable, constant. The same stars that had led a lost wagon train through wilderness and storm. The same stars that had brought two wounded souls together to build something new. Lydia touched the compass at her belt, her father's compass. Worn smooth by decades of use. She'd honored his legacy not by being him, but by carrying his knowledge forward with her own courage. The frontier stretched before them, full of challenges and possibilities. Roads to survey, land to map, community to build, family to raise. Adventures she would face not alone but beside someone who valued her strength, trusted her knowledge, loved her completely. The stars shone steady and sure, watching over the future they would chart together.